Thank you for tuning into our shed hunting series. Today, we are going to examine the right side of a 200 plus inch deer found in Illinois. Now, let's meet this week's Shed King.
There are questions every hunter wants to know. The goal of this series is to examine giant shed antlers from all over the Midwest and beyond to answer one question: where were the antlers found? By knowing that, we can begin to understand more about deer, elk, and where they live outside of hunting season. And more importantly, how to find more shed antlers this spring. Thank you for tuning into Shed Kings. Be sure to hammer that like button and subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.
My name is Garrett Bolkus. I live in Illinois. I have been shed antler hunting probably for 6 to 7 years now. Throughout the time I have been shed hunting, I would say I have somewhere between 80 and 110 antlers. I haven't exactly counted them out yet. My best year of shed hunting would have been 4 years ago when I found 21 sheds in a season. So here is my biggest shed that I have found. This thing is a toad, just a wall of tines. So this shed, I think the most striking feature is average tine length. You know, barring this very short G on the end, every single one of his tines are super long. On top of the fact that you have almost these twin paralleled tines, if you would call them, I don't know if it would be officially scored as a G1 or an inside tine. But I mean, this tine, definitely this one, all over 10 inches. And that's what just pushes this antler over the top. G1 is 4 inches, maybe 10 and 1/8, or G2 I should say, 10 and 1/8. Is 3. 10 and 2/8. Here's 4. Going to be 11 and 6/8. His G5. Going to be 9 and 5/8. G6, that's crazy. G6, 2 and 3/8. That for the H1. So the mass measurement. First one, 4. and 4/8. Second one, 4 and 3/8. Third one is going to be a large one. That is going to be 5 and 3/8. There's fourth one, 4 and 6/8. This is going to be hard to do by myself, but we will make it work. So his main beam going to be 25 and 4/8. So we just put a tape on this antler, and no, we are not professional scorers. However, we're good enough to get close. This antler here went 93 and 7/8 inches. So if you double that and give it a modest 16-inch spread, that puts this deer at 202 inches. However, this deer was actually harvested the following year, and it went 205 inches and some change by the lucky hunter. A phenomenal whitetail, an amazing shed, and one heck of a story. So this antler in particular, first off, is off a deer that I could not hunt. We have a turkey lease that we start scouting around early March, maybe even April, and Jesse and I were actually walking across a cornfield to put some birds to bed, and this guy was laying tines up right in the center of a cornfield, cut cornfield, and that is the habitat that I found him in. To expand on that though, this cornfield is surrounded by very rough and rugged timber, so huge draws, deep valleys, and there's a lot of deer that reside in the area. So this being in the cornfield makes a lot of sense. So the majority of the sheds that I find are going to be 100% solely based around food. When we shed hunt the properties we have permission to, that's where we start. So you find the food, you work it, and then you start working your way out. After that, you're gonna start checking key bedding areas, and even more specifically, those thermal bedding areas. And what do I mean by thermal? So any type of thermal cover via terrain, that's gonna be windbreaks, tall grasses, pines, cedars, and even more specifically than that, any gradual or small south-facing slopes are gonna be key. Those south-facing slopes are gonna soak up all the sun this time of year, and typically they're gonna have the melt off first with the snow. So start with the food, onto the thermal bedding, onto the south-facing slopes. That's gonna be where we find most of our antlers. My biggest piece of advice, if you wanna start finding shed antlers, is you have to have the property that holds the deer in the winter. You can have access to a very large farm, but if it isn't conducive for late season, I'm talking from January to March, to hold those deer, you're probably not gonna find near as many sheds as you want. So having access to those key properties that allow you to hunt, or shed hunt I should say, those areas that hold deer during those crucial 2.5 months when the drop happens, is gonna allow you to find more shed antlers. So before you guys go, I do have a couple interesting and noteworthy sheds that we found over the years. This set here to my right is a match set that we found off of a deer we call Geronimo. I was fortunate enough to harvest this deer when we believe him to be 7.5 years old. This is his 5.5-year-old set of sheds. As you can tell, he was a mainframe 10 with double split G2s. This one was just beat up. It's not chewed up really bad. We found these sheds probably 60 yards apart from each other, and we actually found this left side in a bed, and right next to it was a match set of a smaller deer. So it just shows that like these bucks will group up and bed together during that time of year. But as he sits on his head, if we matched his split and his G4 on this side, when we scored this, giving him a 17-inch spread, he was right at 171. So obviously, you know, that's speculation. His brow tine, his split, and his G4 all could have been something different. But either way, he's an awesome deer, and I was lucky enough, like I said, to harvest this deer when he was 7. Not that I would have passed him at all when he was adorning this frame, but the story of Geronimo is a pretty neat one, and it's actually one of my favorite episodes that we've ever made as Last Breath TV. And then on my left here is another really cool set of sheds that I found. So this set is off of a deer that we called Hero. We believed him to be 5 years old when he had this headgear. An interesting thing about these sheds is that I went out hunting on my Christmas break, and it was the day after Christmas that I found these sheds. I climbed up into the stand late season hunting over a food source, and walking in, I found this side, the side without the kickers. And it was laying right on the trail where I thought the deer were gonna come from. So immediately, your mind starts racing. Instead of me hunting, I just spent the rest of the day in the stand and glassing the cornfield, and lo and behold, I turned this one up. So the earliest set of sheds I have ever found is December 26th. And this deer, again, I harvested the following year. We believed him to be 6.5 at the time.
I only put one shell in. I only put in one shell and only need one shell, baby. Give me that. You see this? Oh my God, do you see this? This is a giant.
And this is a deer that we had assumed had succumbed to an illness or an injury, given the fact that he shed him so early. And out of the blue, he showed up during gun season in Illinois, and I was able to wrap my tag around him. But a beautiful deer. He's got these double kickers on his right side. He lost those. And I guess to follow up to this story, the reason why I shed him so early, why we believe, is that the year that I harvested him, he had a 12 gauge slug buried in his neck. And now it was a superficial wound. It was about, I would say, 1.5 inches deep, and it had been surrounded by scar tissue, so it was from the year before. But given that injury, we believe that's why he dropped these sheds, and those are two pretty dang cool sets of sheds that I wanted to share with you, as well as that mega one that I've been fortunate enough to find.
If you liked this episode, there's more where that came from. Check out the entire Shed Kings playlist on the Last Breath TV YouTube channel and subscribe so that way you never miss an episode.